Linda's going to go through a little bit of a presentation. We're going to sit and have like a fireside chat. We're going to include you in on some conversation together.
Okay. So I wanted to start with a little more of an introduction on who am I? And so this is a picture of my husband and I. I'm a wife, a partner in life. And I have something in common with Lynn here because I think, if I remember right, I married my high school sweetheart. And 40 years later, we're still growing strong, and he's a rock in my life. So wanted to share that.
Love that.
I'm also a mother, a sister, a dog mom. And Grams. Yeah. These are my adorable 4 grandchildren. Have a 5th on the way in November. I'm also a fisherwoman. I own a boat. I drive that boat. I back it in, get my girlfriends and go fishing.
And I have to stop her because I thought it was she was going fishing with her husband. Like I thought like he was driving the boat, he whatever. Her husband doesn't like to fish. She got the boat for her and she rounds up her girlfriends and she goes, steering the fishing boat. I was like, wow.
Yeah. A friend, a caregiver, a farmhand. My husband and I raise Black Angus. We have a farm. Amazing. Just bought 2 horses last weekend. I got a couple extra bruises on my shins in spite of it. A gardener, a lover of nature, and blessed. This is my grandson, and if you can see it, and I think the pictures are big enough, the sheer joy on his face, and he is loving this horse. The horse is relaxed. He's relaxed anyway. So I'm blessed. And besides the fact that, if you get to know me, I would spend a lot of time sharing pictures of my grandkids. I just think it's really important that we are more than just a title. I am so much more than an EVP of operations. And all of you are more than just a title. And it's important that we get to know each other on that level so that we can make connections. And that I may not remember your name. I'm terrible with names. But I'll probably remember if you've got a grandchild or, a Cocker Spaniel or something like that.
Yeah.
So make those connections with each other. I think it's so important, and even more important now than ever, that we see each other as people, that we see the people behind that title.
Okay, so we're gonna do a little fireside chat here. And to preface, Linda started this saying it's important to recognize the people behind the title. I think that it's really important to understand too that our top leaders, there's always somebody above us, right? They're people. So as much as leaders we want to give to our teams, as a team member, giving to that leader as well, and really trying to replenish them because they have so much responsibility for so many people. So I always, when I look at leaders and I look at people I admire and respect, those are all the same people who are the best worker. The one that's going to show up in the factory when things are shut down and it's cold and it's a weekend. Those are the people who show up. Those are the people like Lynn talked about, the CEO that was working in the factory. So I just want to preface to say that, really filling that well for our leaders as well. And I think Linda is really amazing at this. But I wanted to ask you some questions because we've had some fascinating conversations. There's so much to Linda. It's like, an onion, you peel the layers, and every time I just learn so much more. And really, I just want to ask you about your formative years and what shaped you, because for all of us to know and remember as we're going through these sessions, all of that we're bringing with us. We're bringing with us when we're leading. So what was it that shaped you?
So as Jackie mentioned, we were getting ready for this presentation, I was thinking about what can I share? You know, I've worked at the same company for 36 years. I've had a lot of experience, but what can I share? And so it really caused me to reflect on what and who have been, you know, influences in my life and shaped me to who I am today. And it really goes back. I think we often think about our careers, maybe college, bosses we had, mentors, leaders, and they're all, you know, so important in our lives. But I took a step back from that and thought about, you know, what things in my formative growing up years really shaped me. And again, another common thread with Lynn is mom. You know, my mom was a big part of that, but she always wanted to have a big family. It was one of her dreams. She went to school to be a teacher, and she wanted to have a lot of kids, and she was never able to have children. So she ended up adopting my sister and I. And when we were teenagers, my sister and I think I was probably around 14, we started taking in foster kids. And when you think about being a teenager yourself, and now you're bringing in kids into your home that are coming from, you know, who knows what kind of home life and backgrounds, very different than what I experienced as a child. We had a very conservative home. My mom was, you know, able to stay at home and be there for us all the time. She was a teacher, a very creative artist. You know, we had a very stable life. So at 14-ish, we had girls introduced into our lives that did not come from the same kind of background that we did, and had tough things going on in life that they needed support of a foster home. Mm. And, you know, these kids would come in, and you think about it, I'm sure they were scared to death, come into a home and stranger's home, now you're gonna live here. And so to think about, well, how do I connect with these people coming into my house, people I don't know, and try to find a commonality? How can we, you know, make them feel welcome in our home? And I learned that, you know, as a young girl, because as I was growing up as a teenager, I had 18 different foster sisters at one point or the other. 18. Some stayed for, you know, they needed a safe place for the weekend. Some stayed for a few weeks. Some stayed for months. And not only did we learn how to, you know, get to know people and really try to, you know, seek to understand them, and maybe they weren't always nice. You know, it was tough sometimes. And, you know, my mom always said to us, and me in particular, that you need to look for the good in people. And that sometimes that those are the hardest to love, need your love the most. Mm-hmm. And so that sticks with me, that those that maybe are struggling, and whether it's, you know, an employee, somebody you're working with, they're hard to get along with, you know, you don't know what's going on in their life, and maybe they need you just that much more. And so that's been a great lesson. You know, I learned a lot about diversity. Kids coming from, as I said, an entirely different environment that I was used to, different backgrounds, different ethnicity. So it was, you know, a great experience learning. It wasn't easy. We didn't have a huge home. My sister and I shared a bedroom, so when we had a foster sister, we had 3 of us sharing a bedroom. Can you imagine that as a teenager? Yes. You're sharing your space, you're sharing your closet, everything. And there were times, and Carla talked about resiliency, where it wasn't easy. We'd work really hard to make these girls feel welcome in our home, and be nice and kind. And one time, one of them stole my bike and ran away. You know, I had worked really hard for that bike. I mowed lawns all summer long, and she stole my bike and ran away. You know, so it's learning to forgive and try to understand the why behind that, and how to be resilient and be open to that and find the connection. So I think I learned a lot about being flexible and adjusting. It wasn't, you know, it wasn't an easy way to be a teenager, but it certainly taught me a lot in life. And as I reflected and thought about, you know, what really helped shape me today, I think that was a big component in my life. And really learning that empathy and about people. So when you think about, other mentors, influencers, things in your life as you've been growing up, people that maybe saw things in you that you didn't see in yourself, maybe pushed you out of your comfort zone. I'd like us just to take a few minutes. I think it's always great to reflect and share and spend a little time at your table and think about, what or whom has shaped you into who you are today as a leader. And some of you might be thinking, well, I'm not a leader, but you are all leaders. Whether you lead people, you lead by example as a colleague, you're a parent, whatever, you're in an organization of any kind, you are all leaders. So I'd like you to take a few moments at the table and jot down some of those things that have shaped you into who you are today as a leader.
I was going to actually share this as I speak later today as to what shaped me. Really, my dad. And the reason is I'm originally from Iran. I was born in Detroit, Michigan. I am from Iran. And you started with doubts kills dreams. When I was 12 years old, my dream was to be the first Iranian women ambassador to the United Nations. So I was sent to a boarding school in Switzerland to pursue that dream. My dad came to the United States in February of 1979. He had studied at University of Michigan. But 4 things will always shape you to be vertical, meaning that if you're horizontal, you're going to be in a coffin, right? You got to stand still. The 4 things that he taught me, which I have carried through my career and my personal life, is they took everything away from him. His education, they didn't take his mind away, and his education. Second was his pride. We didn't end up on the streets. We didn't go on social welfare. We didn't beg. His pride was too much to allow us to do that. So he actually went moonlighting at emergency rooms at age 44, and here's a man who pioneered hospitals in Iran. So education and pride. He's not a very religious man, but he's a spiritual man. Being a doctor, sometimes he fights with God and religion. But he told us that we have to have faith, that if every door closes, somewhere a window will open up. And then the 4th thing was you need to rely on your gut. If you have these 4 things, education, pride, faith, and rely on your gut, you're going to stand vertical. And those traits, if you will, those 4 pillars shaped me to carry it through my career. And I wanted to share this with you, although emotional, and I was going to share it with everyone later, but truly my dad shaped me as a leader.
Wow, that's awesome.
Thank you.
Somebody mentioned before too that who was it, Carla? I can't remember. You don't know what's going on with people. So when we, maybe deal with difficult people or something's going on, you just really don't know, right? What's going on with people. So it's always good to offer kindness and grace, no matter what, right? So, Linda, do we have time for one more before we move on?
One more. I think there's someone over here that wanted to share.
So I was sharing with my table a little bit about my childhood and how it kind of shaped me. I'm not a leader of people. I don't have a team under me, but I've realized quickly, regardless of whether or not people are reporting to me, they're kind of following me in some ways, right? So that's big. But coming from my childhood, so the longest time I had thought that I had to do it on my own, right? So I'd never accepted help from anybody. I never asked for help. In my later years, especially into my career, I've realized that I had to reach out for help. I had to accept the help. They did. They really did help me. So I think that was the big thing that I learned, was to accept the help and to accept the people around you to drag you through it.
That's awesome.
Thank you. That's what this is all about, is making those connections and feeling that comfort and supporting each other. So thank you for sharing.
Yes. And so turning this into regrouping to looking at our initial hurts and pains that we've all had. We've all had struggles. We've all had challenges, right? And we take those and we either deal with them or we put them on others, right? Because if we don't deal with it ourselves, we're just going to put it on our team. And that's the way it goes. It shows up for women in gossip, in slander, in competition, in all kinds of areas, right? So this conference is a squirmy in your seats kind of conference, summit, I think we're calling it now. And it's not about outside others. It's about right now us, internal. So that's what we're trying to do, is go internal. So with that, a very important question that I have for Linda that I posed to her that took a lot of time and reflection and was, how have you seen women in particular derail our careers in the workplace?
So a few things. And I think we talked about emotion. And emotion and passion, probably two different things, in the way I look at it. Passion is amazing, that you have passion for things and that you're passionate about things and that you share that and you show that. But when your emotions take over, I've seen that really derail people. And not understanding and knowing yourself well enough to know what those triggers are. We all have triggers. I think Carla talked about the flush. You start tapping your foot or grinding your teeth, whatever it might be. You need to recognize those triggers so that you can say, okay, I need to take a step back here. And it's okay if you're in a conversation or a situation and you feel yourself, you're losing it, basically, you're getting too emotional, that it's okay to just say, hey, I need to take a step back. Can we, resume this conversation later? Whatever it might be, just to know that that's where you are. I think the other thing that's really important is that you have an anchor so that you can kind of reground yourself. If you're like me, and that's another little tick on my mark I'll put, I'll go back and I'll replay things in my mind over and over and over and over again. And that's my, 3 a.m. the witching hour, I call it. So how do you reground yourself? And for me, I'm a really visual person. So I reground myself with that picture of my grandson or my grandkids. How does that bring me back to something that's going to calm me down and get me in a better frame of mind so I can rethink things? There's something called the amygdala, and that's a hard word to say. The amygdala hijack, which is just that natural reaction, that fight or flight. And sometimes we just want to fight, and what happens then is we end up saying things that we can't take back.
Yep.
And so when you feel yourself getting to that point where you want to strike out and you're going to hurt someone else, it's time to take a step back, because ultimately you're going to hurt yourself. I think the other thing, Jackie mentioned the gossip, and we all like some good juicy gossip, is triangulation. We've seen that happen. And when you're part of a team, leading a team, being part of a team, and you're together and you're collaborating and you're making decisions and maybe it's something really hard, you have an opportunity to speak up and share your thoughts. But when you walk away and now you're sharing something different with someone else and you start that triangulation, that can really derail you, because you're going to be known as someone who says yes to your face, but no, the pocket video in the back of the room, which you don't want to do. So those have been some of the biggest derailers I've seen, mistakes that people have made, and letting your pride get in the way. I love what you said, Lynn, about people have better ideas than you do, and they might be better at things than you are, and that's wonderful. You need to embrace that. You don't have to be the smartest person in the room, and so those would be things that you watch out for. Know what your triggers are. Know how to manage those. and be passionate.
And also, we had talked prior, I think it's an important topic is about criticism. So what I'm noticing, because I sit back and watch and learn, and it's always fascinating. That's the one thing about the podcast I love, is being able to talk to our top leaders. But it appears that the most influential leaders can handle criticism without attacking. So one of my mentors always would tell me, every single time you get offended, every time, it doesn't matter if it's in your work life, your personal life, whatever, introspect first, go inward first, and then decide, is this really me, like you're saying, your triggers, or is it really something to be upset about? But anyway, let's talk about, you have managed a lot of people, and you have seen people derail in this area, right? So what would your input and advice be on managing criticism? What are some of those tools? What are things people can do when they're being told something? And sometimes it might be not getting a promotion, not getting a job because they're not ready yet.
Right. So, and I think when we talked about this, it'd be, well, what would be a do-over for me? And I would have a lot of do-overs, believe me, over the years. But I think not giving good enough feedback, and I'm going to use your closet analogy because I think that's wonderful. First, you've got to put something in the closet so that you can take that feedback and really work with it. And I haven't always been clear in giving feedback to people that have worked for me along the journey. And, what I might kind of beat around the bush or try to soften, clear is kind. And I've realized in the last few years had an experience with someone who worked for me that I'd known for years, and I thought we were really on the same page. We had great conversations together, talked about areas where this person could improve, and we ended up bringing in a leader that was over her. And I was very much taken aback and kind of shocked at the reaction. We had prepared and we had talked about it, but it became very clear to me that I hadn't been clear enough with her on that she just wasn't ready yet for this opportunity. Didn't mean that she wouldn't ever be ready, but there were areas that she needed to work on and grow from, and just more experience. And at the time, we needed the experience that we brought in. And I had a part in that. And as a leader, it's very humbling. Hurts my heart, still hurts my heart. And I hope a lesson that I've learned is that I didn't do her any favors, because that has been a real setback for her. We'll work through it and move forward, and it will be good. But I know that I had a part in that. So I think, be clear, be supportive, and understand that you need to, for someone to be able to move forward, you need to give them that advice and that feedback, and that here's very clear areas where, I need you to spend some time so you can be successful. And so.
Oh, that's a tough one. Giving the critical feedback. That's probably an area we all struggle with. It's like you said, our natural superpowers are compassion, kindness, all these things. And we're going to hear from Dr. Sean tomorrow, who's going to help us through a lot of these. But having those tough conversations is really critical, because then if somebody doesn't have the skills developed, they can't advance.
Right. And if you haven't given that feedback, it's pretty hard to go back and say, yes, and here, are the things. And it's like, wow, they shouldn't be hearing it for the first time.
Ooh. And what about managing when you're the one not getting the promotion, not getting the advancement, or feeling like you got gypped? This is an area I would say where, we tend to see people get really not their best self.
Right.
and where we really need our tribe to come alongside of us, because maybe that's an area where people can derail their career as well. How they manage
Definitely
that.
can. And that's where pride gets in your way sometimes.
Yeah. Let's look at, we're talking about a lot of things here. We're going to ingest a lot of information. And part of us putting up these different leaders that have had proven track records for success is to get all kinds of different feedback. You got to hit it on so many different angles. So, Linda, for you, if you look, you personally, you look at an influential leader, you look at somebody who can be very effective, somebody you would advance. What are those qualities that you're looking for?
So, someone who really is very self-aware, lives their values, knows what their values are, and lives those, personally and professionally, authentic. They bring their authentic self to work every single day. You know who they are. I love, and I love quotes too, so when you said that at the beginning, I thought, oh, okay, I've got a couple quotes to share. This one really resonated recently with me, and it's an Oprah Winfrey, and it's, your values are what you feel in your soul. And so many people struggle to say, well, what are my values? And I think that really helps define, it's what you feel in your soul and your heart that are important to you and that you live your life by, and how you show up every day. I think empathy is extremely important. And when Jackie and I did a podcast, Jackie and Dave and I did a podcast, and I told a story about a couple of leaders that I had an opportunity to meet at a conference I was at. And they were both CEOs of two very large companies. And they were both women, which was so cool to me. You don't always see that. And they came out and they were introduced. And the first things that they started talking about was the importance of change management and people aspects of things, having emotional intelligence, that empathy, making connections. And I just thought to myself, wow, we've all known those things are really important, but to have two really powerful women leaders in these large, Fortune 500 companies to come out, and that's what they talk about first, really spoke to me. And so I think seeing and knowing and feeling a leader who has those qualities and recognize how important they are is something I feel very effective and very influential. Transparency is really important in being trustworthy. The other day we were going through some training and I learned a new acronym, which I wanted to share, called FEAR. And it's false evidence appearing real, which describes that effect of your mind telling you a story. If you don't have, the truth or the facts, your mind starts telling you a story and it causes a physical reaction in you. And that's the acronym of FEAR. And I thought, how true is that? If we don't have the whole story and the real story, we start making up our own story.
Yeah.
So a transparent leader that you trust is critically important. And then authenticity, and I said it earlier, Lynn said it, Carla said it, just bring the real you to the table. And, it's really at the heart of success. Authenticity is at the heart of success. Cultivate someone who's willing to cultivate and grow other leaders. And then as a leader, there's nothing more satisfying than seeing someone on your team succeed and grow. And sometimes they might even surpass you. And that is, as a leader, such a wonderful gift. It's like being proud of your kids.
Right. Yeah.
The other day in a training, we had some of our leaders speaking, and I was so personally proud of them. I don't know that I had anything to do with in how they presented themselves, but there's no greater feeling than watching others succeed that you maybe had a small part in. And so if you have a leader that's willing to invest in you and advocate for you and create opportunities for you to succeed, those are leaders that you want to follow.
I think that's awesome. And Dr. Sean, again, tomorrow is going to do a whole session about this too, of helping other women thrive versus equalizing, which a lot of women don't even realize we do. We equalize, just kind of bring someone down to level the playing field. That happens. So we're going to talk about that. But leaders that actually help elevate people is really what we need right now. We need to get in check with ourselves so we can help other women rise, is really essential. I think you hit it so perfectly with it's the values. And we're going to have a lot of discussion about this tomorrow. Can we just take 5 minutes? I hope, is this okay if we just take 5 minutes and really document and write down each and every one of you, what are my personal values that I live by? For instance, for me, here I am, with Monica and Amy doing Women in Electronics, it's justice. Justice is one of the things for me, my entire life has been so critically important. I can't stand it when somebody is mistreated. It's just been a thing for me in my life. It's one of my core values is justice. So that's something. Integrity, trust, being able to count on people, these are essential, right? But that's just me. It's not that it's a value for everyone. And so there's different values for different people, right? And so if you could just take 5 minutes and just document in your core, what are your key values? And this is going to help for tomorrow as well.
And I think last year in a session, I think it was Cassandra Rambo said, what's your why? And I think that helps define what's your value. It's, what's your why?
Yep.
And as Oprah would say, what do you feel in your soul?
Moving beyond this summit, we're hoping that we're going to be wrapping up this session soon. You're going to be having some more sessions as we go along. But we're hoping that you go back and really introspect and keep looking at this. You've got just a limited time here. These are things Amy mentioned about taking that development time every single day. And that's what this is all about. This is part of those exercises so that when you're making decisions and leading, you go back to those values, right? And what's important. So, but with that, Linda, I wanted to ask you, so one final question that we can have some tangible takeaways, right? So what are some tools and what are some things we can have in that toolbox as we go on beyond this summit that could really help people in leveling up their career?
So I wanted to share this as a leader. And we did some recent leadership training on coachability and staying coachable. And there's a book, I forgot to bring it up, but it's Coachability, the Leadership Superpower. It's Kevin D. White writes the books. There's some great, just very actionable activities in the book and some memorable things. But this really struck me, and it reminded me of that picture that you've seen with the nail in the middle of the forehead. So that's how this felt to me around coachability and spoke to me. And it said that, as we advance in age, in tenure, and in our careers, we run the risk of being less coachable. And based on some studies that they had done, that leaders in senior leadership positions are 36% less coachable than someone who is early in their career. So from, mid-management and on, in theory, and in obviously in the studies that were done, we become less coachable. And so that just kind of hit me in between the forehead because, okay, I've got the age, I've got 36 years in the company, VP of operations, and that I'm just like, I don't want that to be me. I get a little bit competitive there and prove them wrong. And so I wanted to share that as a leader, wherever we are in our careers, we are never done. And so when you talk about this conference and the idea of leveling up and continuing to learn, we're never done. And so be open, be able to take in the feedback, know that you have more to learn. And, you know, again, Lynn, I loved your story about you asked for a mentor and he said, we're going to learn from each other.
Yeah.
And we do all learn from each other. And just because we're at a certain point in our careers doesn't mean that we're done growing and learning. So, you know, strive to continue to learn and be open to that. A last thought that I wanted to share with you, and again, this came out of the book, is that I love this quote. So humility is not the opposite of confidence, it's the freedom for learning. And it's an amazing quote. We are all perfectly imperfect works in progress, and we are never done. So thank you for investing in yourselves and coming to this conference. And my what if for today would be if you could take one thing, or even a handful of you can take one thing from what we talked about and take it back and either practice it or take to your teams. That would be my what if. So that's my hope.